The great chamber of the Galactic Council was built to make visitors feel small. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds sometimes formed beneath the glass dome. The walls were carved from stone taken from 100 different worlds, each piece representing a species that had earned its place among the stars, and at the center of it all, arranged in a perfect circle, sat the thrones of the 12 elder species. Ambassador Elena Vasquez had stood in this chamber many times. She knew every crack in the floor, every whisper that echoed off the ancient walls. She knew where to stand, so the light from the twin suns would not blind her. She knew which delegates would sneer at her, which would ignore her, and which would pretend she did not exist at all. Today, she stood in her usual spot. The spot without a chair, the spot reserved for humanity. For 300 years, her people had come to this chamber as guests, not members. Not equals, guests. They were allowed to watch. They were allowed to listen. Sometimes, if the elder species were feeling generous, they were allowed to speak. Elena had spent 20 years fighting for those moments. 20 years of careful words and patient smiles. 20 years of swallowing her pride while creatures who had never set foot on Earth decided the fate of human colonies. The Therian High Arbiter was speaking now. His voice filled the chamber like thunder, deep and rumbling. His species had ruled this council for 10,000 years. They were ancient beyond human understanding, their bodies towering and insect-like, their minds sharp as broken glass. They did not like humanity. They had never liked humanity. The matter before us is simple, the Arbiter announced. The Dravith Collective has proposed new trade regulations. All goods passing through council space will be subject to a 15% tariff. This includes goods from provisional members. Lena felt her stomach tighten. Provisional members. That was the polite way of saying humanity. The only provisional member in 3,000 years of council history. The Dravith ambassador rose from his throne. He was a small creature, covered in gray scales, with eyes that never seemed to blink. The tariff is necessary, he said smoothly. Our shipyards require funding. Our fleets protect all council species, including the humans. It is only fair they contribute. Elena wanted to laugh. Fair. The Draith fleets had never protected a human colony. When the Krell raiders had attacked the settlement on Proxima 7, the Dravith ships had arrived 3 weeks late. By then, 2,000 humans were dead, but the council had called it an unfortunate delay. These things happened. Humanity should be grateful for any protection at all. I wish to speak, Elena said. Her voice was calm, steady. She had practiced this moment in front of her. Mirror for weeks. The Arbiter's massive head turned toward her. His compound eyes reflected her image 1,000 times. The human representative may address the council. You have 90 seconds. The Dravith had spoken for 20 minutes, but Elena was used to this. She had learned to say what mattered quickly. Thank you, High Arbiter. She stepped forward into the center of the chamber. I have served as humanity's ambassador for 2 decades. In that time, I have made 472 formal requests. Requests for full membership. Requests for voting rights. Requests for protection, for trade agreements, for simple recognition that humans are not children who need to be watched. She paused. The chamber was silent. Every request was denied. Every single one. She looked around at the faces of the elder species. Some would not meet her eyes. We were told to wait, to prove ourselves, to be patient. We were told that one day, if we behaved, we might earn our place among you. The Arbiter made a clicking sound that might have been amusement. Your point, Ambassador? Your time runs short, Elena smiled. It was not a warm smile. My point is this. Humanity formally withdraws its application for full council membership. We withdraw from all existing treaties, trade agreements, and mutual defense pacts. Effective immediately. For a moment, nothing happened. The words hung in the air like smoke. Then the chamber erupted. The Velith ambassador shot to his feet, his silver robe swirling. You cannot do this. There are procedures, protocols. We are not members, Elena replied calmly. We are guests. Guests are free to leave. The Draped ambassador was sputtering, his scales flushing dark with anger. This is madness. You need us. Your colonies depend on council trade routes. Your ships use our star charts. Without us, you are nothing. Alina turned to face him. Perhaps. But you have spent 300 years making certain we would never find out what we could be without you. I think it is time we learned. The Therian High Arbiter rose from his throne. He was enormous, towering over the other delegates like a mountain over hills. His voice boomed through the chamber with barely contained fury. You will regret this, human. Your species is young, foolish. You do not understand what you are throwing away. Alina bowed once, the formal gesture of respect that the council demanded. But when she rose, her eyes were hard. We understand perfectly, High Arbiter. We understand that we have spent 3 centuries being told we are less. Being told we are not ready. Being told that our ideas are too dangerous, too primitive, too human. She paused. We are done being told. She turned and walked toward the great doors of the chamber. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. No one tried to stop her. Perhaps they were too shocked. Perhaps they simply could not believe what was happening. At the doorway, she paused and looked back one final time. Goodbye, Council. Do try not to miss us too much. Then she was gone. Within 6 hours, every human vessel in Council space had jumped to hyperspace. Research stations were abandoned. Trade posts fell silent. Human scientists packed their equipment and vanished. Human merchants closed their shops and disappeared. Human diplomats boarded their ships and flew into the darkness between stars. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Species had been conquered. Species had been destroyed. Species had faded into extinction. But no species had ever simply walked away. The Therian High Arbiter returned to his throne and summoned his advisors. They would discuss this matter, he decided. They would analyze and debate and consider their options. There was no need for alarm. Humanity was young and foolish. They would come crawling back within a month, begging for forgiveness. He was still laughing about it when the first economic reports arrived on his desk. He read them once, then again, then a third time, because surely there had been some mistake. The laughter died in his throat. Humanity had not been a junior partner. Humanity had not been a burden the Council graciously carried. Humanity, it turned out, had been holding far more threads than anyone had realized, and now those threads were being pulled. 3 months of silence. 3 months without a single transmission from human space. 3 months of waiting for the apology that never came. The Galactic Council had expected many things when humanity walked away. They had expected panic. They had expected regret. They had expected desperate messages begging for readmission, perhaps accompanied by grand gestures of submission. The elder species had seen it before. Younger races sometimes needed to be reminded of their place. They threw tantrums, made bold declarations, and then came crawling back when reality set in. But humanity did not crawl back. Humanity did not send messages. Humanity simply vanished behind a wall of silence, so complete that it felt like a grave. The Therian Empire sent probes to investigate. The probes detected a strange interference field surrounding human territory, a barrier of scrambled signals and electromagnetic noise that their sensors could not penetrate. Their scientists studied the readings for weeks and concluded that they had never seen anything like it. It is impossible, the chief scientist reported to the High Arbiter. Our technology cannot create such a field. Theirs should not be able to either. The Arbiter dismissed the concern. Humanity was simply hiding, he decided. Like children in a dark room, hoping the silence would make them seem important. Eventually they would grow hungry for attention and emerge. But as the weeks passed, cracks began appearing in places no one had expected. The Velith Consortium was the first to feel the pain. Their civilization stretched across 40 worlds, each one a paradise of perfectly managed agriculture. Vast automated farms fed billions of mouths, their systems running with clockwork precision. The Velith had not worried about food in 1,000 years. Then the systems began to fail. It started small. A harvesting machine stopped responding to commands. An irrigation network developed strange glitches. A seed distribution center refused to open its doors. The Velith engineers investigated and discovered something disturbing. The software running their agricultural systems had been designed by humans. Not all of it. Just the critical parts. The parts that made everything work together. The parts that turned a collection of machines into a functioning whole. The software licenses required regular validation from human servers. Those servers were now silent. And without validation, the systems were shutting down. One by one, within weeks, crops were failing across 12 Velith worlds. Emergency measures were enacted. Ancient manual farming techniques were revived, but the Velith had forgotten how to grow food with their own hands. They had trusted the machines. They had trusted the humans who built them. Now they were learning what that trust had cost. The Dravith Collective suffered differently. Their civilization was built on ships. They made the finest vessels in the galaxy, warships and freighters and exploration craft that were the envy of every species. Their shipyards had operated continuously for 8,000 years. Now those shipyards were grinding to a halt. The Dravith had always known that certain rare elements were necessary for their construction processes. Elements that were toxic, difficult to extract, and found only in the most hostile environments. For centuries, they had contracted humanity to mine those elements. Humans, it seemed, were willing to do the jobs that other species considered beneath them. The Dravith had seen this as proof of human inferiority. Only a desperate, primitive species would accept such dangerous work. Now, they realized the truth. Humanity had not been desperate. Humanity had been patient. They had positioned themselves at the center of a web that no one else could see, without those rare elements. Dravith shipyards could not produce new vessels. Without new vessels, their fleets would age and weaken. Without their fleets, Collective would lose the military power that had kept them safe for millennia. The Dravith, ambassador who had proposed the trade tariff, was quietly removed from his position. His replacement immediately began drafting apology letters to humanity. Those letters went unanswered. But of all the elder species, the Therian Empire suffered most strangely. The Therians were ancient and proud. They had conquered worlds when humanity's ancestors were still learning to use fire. Their culture was built on logic, efficiency, and the cold certainty that emotions were weakness. They had mocked humanity's obsession with entertainment, those silly stories and songs and games that seemed to consume so much human energy. A waste of resources, the High Arbiter had often declared. A sign of an undeveloped species. Now Therian youth wandered through their great hive cities in listless despair. They gathered in empty rooms where screens had once played human broadcasts. They sat in silence where human music had once filled the air. They stared at devices that no longer connected to the vast library of human entertainment that had quietly become the center of their lives. The streaming services were gone. The serialized dramas that had captured Therian hearts were gone. The interactive games that had given young Therians something to care about were gone. The strange emotional music that somehow reached past Therian logic and touched something deeper was gone. Productivity across the Empire dropped by 40%. Young Therians refused to work, refused to study, refused to do anything but mourn the loss of something they had been taught to despise. The High Arbiter could not understand it. These were just stories, just noise, just human nonsense. But his own advisors, ancient Therians who had lived for thousands of years, quietly confessed that they too missed the human broadcasts. That there had been a warmth in those stories, a connection to something alive and unpredictable and wonderful. We told ourselves we were superior, one advisor said softly. We told ourselves that human culture was primitive entertainment for primitive minds. But we were the ones watching. We were the ones listening. We were the ones who could not look away. The council convened an emergency session. The great chamber that had once rung with confidence now echoed with fear. They will return, the new Dravith ambassador insisted, though his voice lacked conviction. They need us more than we need them. They cannot survive alone. No one in the chamber believed it anymore. The Velith ambassador rose, his silver robes hanging loose on a body that had grown thin with worry. We must send envoys. We must negotiate. We must offer whatever they want. And what do they want? The Therian High Arbiter demanded. For the first time in living memory, he sounded old, tired, uncertain. We have sent 17 diplomatic missions. All have been turned away at the border. They will not speak to us. Then we wait, another delegate suggested weakly. Eventually, they must communicate. Eventually, they must need something from us. The chamber fell silent, because that was the truth they were all avoiding. The truth that kept them awake at night, staring at ceilings that suddenly seemed very close and very dark. What if humanity did not need anything from them? What if they never had? What if, for 300 years, the galaxy had been treating an essential partner like a servant, and now that servant had simply decided to stop serving? The meeting ended without resolution. The delegates returned to their worlds to face crises they did not know how to solve. The great chamber of the Galactic Council sat empty and dark, and from the silent territory of humanity, not a single word emerged. They were not begging. They were not negotiating. They were not playing the game the Council had always controlled. They were simply gone, and the galaxy was beginning to understand that gone might be forever. Ambassador Rethvon of the Morvith hegemony had always been different from the other elder statesmen. Where they saw tradition, she saw chains. Where they saw wisdom, she saw fear. And where they saw humanity as a lesser species to be managed, she had always seen something else. Something that made her curious. Something that made her nervous. She had watched Alina Vasquez walk out of the council chamber 3 months ago. She had seen the look in the human ambassador's eyes. Not anger. Not desperation. Relief. Pure, simple relief. As if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders that look haunted. Rethvon's dreams. Now she sat in a small diplomatic vessel at the edge of human space, staring at the wall of interference that blocked all communication and sensor readings. Her crew of 3 waited in nervous silence. They all knew what she was about to do. They all knew it was forbidden. The Council had issued strict orders. No unauthorized contact with humanity. No attempts to enter human territory. The elder species would present a united front, showing the humans that their departure meant nothing, that the galaxy would carry on without them. Vaughn had decided that the Council was wrong. She activated her communication system and transmitted a simple message on every frequency her ship could reach. This is Ambassador Rethvon of the Morvith hegemony. I am here alone, without weapons, without recording devices. I carry no authority from the Council. I speak only for myself. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. Please, I only wish to understand. For a long moment, nothing happened. The interference field continued its endless scrambling. Her crew exchanged worried glances. Perhaps this had been a mistake. Perhaps she would be laughed at, or ignored, or simply turned away like all the others. Then the interference field opened. It parted like a curtain, creating a corridor of clear space just wide enough for her small ship. On the other side, she could see stars. Human stars. Human space. An invitation. Rethvon flew forward before she could change her mind. What she found on the other side defied everything the Council believed about humanity. Everything the elder species had taught themselves over 3 centuries of. Condescension and control. Her first stop was a research station orbiting a small yellow star. The station was new, its metal still bright and unweathered. Human scientists welcomed her with warm smiles and cups of a hot brown liquid they called coffee. They showed her their laboratories, their equipment, their ongoing projects. We could never do this under Council oversight, Dr. James Chen explained. He was an older human, his hair white and his face lined with years of frustration that had suddenly melted away. Every time we tried to advance, we were told to stop. Too dangerous, too unpredictable, too human. He led her to a window overlooking a massive construction project in the asteroid belt beyond the station. Robotic arms moved with perfect precision, assembling something vast and beautiful.
Oh.
Clean fusion power, Chen said simply. We cracked it 2 weeks after we left. The principles were there all along. We just needed permission to try. Rethvon stared at the construction. The council spent centuries trying to develop clean fusion. We never succeeded. Chen shrugged. You also spent centuries telling each other it was impossible. We spent 3 months assuming it wasn't. She visited a shipyard next, buried deep within an asteroid so large it had its own gravity. Human workers moved through the corridors with purpose and energy, building vessels faster than she would have believed possible. Their ships were different from council designs, simpler in some ways, more complex in others, beautiful in ways that council ships never were. A young engineer named Sarah walked her through the production process. Quantum state manufacturing, Sarah explained, gesturing at machines that seemed to reshape matter itself. Another thing the council said was impossible. Turns out it just needed someone crazy enough to try. How did you develop this so quickly? Rethwan asked. 3 months is nothing. My species has existed for 100,000 years, and we never dreamed of such technology. Sarah smiled. It was the same smile Alina Vasquez had worn when she walked out of the council chamber. Because you were always told what you couldn't do. What was forbidden? What was impossible? She looked around at the bustling shipyard, pride shining in her eyes. The moment we stopped listening, we started building. Rethvan spent a week in human space. She visited colonies that had been isolated backwaters and were now thriving centers of innovation. She saw floating cities being assembled in the rings of gas giants. She watched human artists create works of beauty that moved her to tears, and human scientists solve problems that had puzzled elder species for millennia. But it was the humans themselves who shocked her most. They were not bitter. They were not angry. They were not plotting revenge against the council that had mistreated them for so long. They were happy. Happy in a way that Rethvan had never seen in any species. Happy like creatures who had been trapped in cages their whole lives and had finally been set free. They laughed easily. They dreamed without limits. They looked at the universe not as a collection of boundaries to respect, but as an endless frontier to explore. On her last day, she met with Alina Vasquez in a garden on Earth's moon. Real flowers grew there, breathing recycled air, reaching toward artificial sunlight. It was impossible and beautiful and perfectly human. Why did you let me in? Rethvan asked. After everything the council did to your people, after all those centuries of insults, Alina considered the question, because you asked differently. The others demanded, you asked? That seems like a small distinction, perhaps, but small things matter. You came alone, without weapons, without demands. You said you wanted to understand. Lena smiled softly. That's more than the council ever offered us. Rethvan looked around at the garden, at the dome overhead, at the earth hanging blue and white in the black sky. I have to report what I've seen. The council needs to know. We assumed you would. Alina did not seem concerned. Tell them whatever you wish. Tell them we are thriving. Tell them we are happy. Tell them we have no intention of returning. They will want to negotiate. They're desperate. I know. Elena's voice was calm but firm. But we spent 300 years negotiating from weakness, begging for scraps from species who saw us as children at best, as pests at worst. We are done begging. Rethvan left human space the next day. The interference field parted for her once more, then closed behind her like a door being shut. She sat in her small ship, staring at the wall of static, thought about everything she had seen. Then she began composing her report. She wrote for hours, carefully choosing each word. She described the technology, the progress, the impossible speed of human development. But more than that, she described the feeling of human space, the energy, the hope, the sense that anything was possible if you were brave enough to try. Her report contained a single devastating conclusion, one that she knew would shake the council to its foundation. Humanity had never needed them. They had never needed the council's protection, or guidance, or approval. They had only believed they did, because the council had spent 300 years telling them. So now they knew the truth, and that truth changed everything. Rethvan's report spread through the council like wildfire at first. The elder species refused to believe it. Clean fusion in 2 weeks? Quantum state manufacturing in 3 months? Floating cities being assembled in gas giant rings? It had to be exaggeration. It had to be propaganda. Humans were trying to appear stronger than they were, hoping to negotiate from a position of false power. Then the Therian Intelligence Service managed to capture long-range images of human space. The images showed exactly what Rethvon had described. Shipyards producing vessels at impossible speeds. Colonies expanding faster than any species in galactic history. Technology that the elder races had dreamed of for millennia. Being deployed as if it were nothing special, the panic that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Velith Consortium, still struggling with their agricultural collapse, sent a desperate message to humanity. They offered to eliminate all trade barriers. They offered favorable terms on every resource humanity might need. They offered apologies, formal and humble, for centuries of condescension. Humanity listened politely. Then they declined. "We have developed our own agricultural systems," the human response stated. "They are more efficient than yours. We do not require your assistance." The Dravith Collective, their shipyards still crippled by lack of rare elements, went even further. They offered to pay humanity for the privilege of trade. It's not just fair prices, premium prices. Double what the materials were worth on the open market. Humanity listened politely. Then they declined. "We have found alternative uses for those elements," the human response stated. "Our own ships now require them. We have none to spare." But it was the Therian Empire that made the most desperate offer of all, the High Arbiter. Ancient and proud, swallowed 10,000 years of cultural superiority and personally composed a message to humanity. He offered full membership in the Galactic Council. It's not provisional status. Full membership. Equal voting rights. A throne in the Great Chamber. Carved from the finest stone of the Therian homeworld. He offered to step down from his position if humanity requested it. He offered to restructure the council itself, to give humanity a voice equal to the eldest species. He offered everything the humans had begged for during 3 centuries of patient diplomacy. Humanity listened politely. Then they declined. The message came not from some minor official, but from Alina Vasquez herself. The council had set up a holographic transmission system, hoping that direct communication might succeed where written messages had failed. When Elena's image appeared in the Great Chamber, every delegate fell silent. She looked different than she had 3 months ago. The tension that had always lined her face was gone. She stood straighter, spoke easier, smiled in a way that reached her eyes. "Thank you for your offer, High Arbiter," she said. Her voice filled the chamber, calm and clear. "It is generous. More generous than anything the Council offered during 300 years of our membership applications." The Arbiter leaned forward on his throne, hope flickering in his compound eyes. "Then you accept? You will return?" Lena shook her head slowly. "No, we will not." The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. The Arbiter raised a massive claw for silence. "Then what do you want?" he demanded. "Name your price. Whatever it takes to restore our relationship, the Council will provide." Alina was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that silenced the chamber completely. "You misunderstand us, High Arbiter. We are not bargaining. We are not playing hard to get. We are not waiting for a better offer." She paused. "We simply do not want what you have to give." "That is impossible," the Dravith ambassador sputtered. "Everyone wants something. Power, resources, security, name it." Alina smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "For 300 years we came to this chamber with innovations. We brought solutions to problems that had puzzled your scientists for centuries. We offered art that moved your people to tears and technology that could have changed the galaxy." She began walking slowly, her holographic image moving through the center of the chamber as if she were physically present. "And every time you told us to wait. You told us we were not ready. You told us our ideas were too dangerous, too unpredictable, too human." Her voice grew harder. "You were not protecting us from ourselves. You were protecting yourselves from us, from the possibility that we might succeed where you had failed." The chamber was absolutely silent. No one could meet her eyes. "We are done asking for permission," Elena continued. "We are done waiting for approval. We are done being told what we cannot do by species, too afraid to try. She stopped in front of the Therian High Arbiter's throne. Looking up at the ancient creature who had ruled this council for longer than humanity had existed as a civilization. You want to know what we want? We want you to grow. We want you to stop being afraid. We want you to remember what it felt like to look at the stars and believe that anything was possible. The Arbiter's voice was barely a whisper, and if we cannot, Elena's expression softened slightly, then we will go on without you. We will explore the universe. We will push the boundaries of what is possible. We will make mistakes and learn from them and keep moving forward. She turned to address the entire chamber one final time. We are not your enemies. We do not seek revenge for centuries of insults. But we are also not your children. We do not need your guidance, your protection, or your permission. We are building something new. Something based not on hierarchy and control, but on cooperation and growth. You are welcome to join us if you can accept us as equals. She paused, letting the words sink in. But we will not come back to this chamber. We will not sit in the provisional seat and beg for scraps. Those days are over. Her holographic image began to fade, but her voice remained clear. The door is open, Council, but you will have to walk through it yourselves. Then she was gone. The great chamber sat in stunned silence. For the first time in 10,000 years, no one knew what to say. The rules that had governed galactic civilization, since before humanity discovered fire, had been thrown aside. Everything they understood about power and diplomacy, the natural order of species, had been turned upside down. The Therian High Arbiter slowly sank back into his throne. He looked older than anyone could remember, older than the stones that built this chamber. She did not even raise her voice, he said quietly. She did not threaten us. She did not demand anything. No, Rethvon agreed softly. She simply told us the truth. The truth was devastating. Humanity had not won by being stronger or smarter or more ruthless. They had won by simply refusing to play a game they could never win. They had walked away from the table and built their own game with their own rules. Now the council faced a choice. They could cling to their pride and watch their civilizations slowly crumble. Or they could swallow their arrogance and accept that the youngest species in the galaxy had learned something they never had. The choice should have been obvious. But 10,000 years of superiority are not easily set aside. And pride has destroyed more empires than any enemy ever could. 1 year after humanity walked away, something unprecedented happened. The interference field around human space dissolved. Not partially, not with conditions, but completely. The barrier that had hidden humanity from the galaxy simply vanished. Like morning fog burned away by sunlight. In its place, a message broadcast on every frequency, in every language. To every corner of known space, the borders of human space are now open. Any individual, from any species, is welcome to visit, to study, to trade, to stay, if they choose. The message paused, as if giving the galaxy time to process the impossible words. There is only one requirement. Leave your prejudice at the door. Here, we are all equals. Here, we all have room to grow. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Young Therians were the first to arrive. Thousands of them. Flooding across the border in personal vessels and stolen shuttles and ships they had built themselves in secret, they came seeking the music and stories and games that had been ripped from their lives. But they found something more. They found human universities that welcomed them as students. Human artists who taught them to create, not just consume. Human communities that accepted them not as superior beings to be honored, but as individuals with potential to be developed. For the first time in their ancient history, young Therians learned what it felt like to earn something through effort rather than inheritance. Velith scientists came next. Their agricultural systems were still struggling, their people still hungry, their pride still wounded. They arrived expecting to negotiate, to bargain, to trade secrets for food. Instead, they found human researchers eager to collaborate, eager to share, eager to combine Velith biological knowledge, human innovation, and create something neither species could have built alone. Within months, new agricultural techniques were spreading across Velith worlds. techniques that belonged to no one and everyone. Techniques that were freely given because humanity had decided that hungry people mattered more than patents. Even the Dravith came, though they came more slowly and with more suspicion. Their merchants arrived first, expecting to find angles to exploit and weaknesses to leverage. What they found confused them deeply. Human markets operated on principles the Dravith had never seen. Fair prices. Honest weights. Contracts that said what they meant and meant what they said. There was profit to be made, but it was profit that left both parties better off. Not profit stolen from the desperate. Some Dravith merchants left in disgust. Unable to function in a system that did not reward cleverness and deception, but others stayed. They learned new ways of doing business. They discovered that trust could be more valuable than gold, and slowly, they began to teach those lessons to their children. The transformation was not instant. Change never is. The elder species had spent millennia building systems of hierarchy and control. Those systems did not collapse overnight, but they did collapse, month by month. Year by year, the Galactic Council's chambers grew emptier. Species that had sat in those crystal thrones for thousands of years began sending their regrets. They were too busy, they explained. Too occupied with new projects and partnerships. Too engaged with the opportunities that human space offered. Ambassador Rethvon was among the first of the elder statesmen to formally resign from the council. She accepted a teaching position at a human university called New Geneva, where she lectured on diplomacy and the failures of hierarchy. Her students were young. Therians and Velith scientists and Draith merchants and humans from a dozen different worlds. They sat together in the same classrooms, ate together in the same cafeterias, argued and laughed and learned from each other. Rethvon had spent centuries studying the rise and fall of civilizations. She had watched empires crumble and species fade into extinction. She had seen the galaxy change in 1,000 different ways, but she had never seen anything like this. We always believed that power flowed downward, she told her students one afternoon. That the strong ruled the weak, that the old guided the young, that the established defined what was possible. We believed this because it was all we had ever known. She paused, looking at the diverse faces before her. Humanity showed us a different way. They did not conquer us. They did not force us to change. They simply offered an alternative and waited to see who would choose it. A young Therian raised her hand. But why? After everything the council did to them, why would they welcome us? Rethvon smiled. It was a question she had asked Alina Vasquez herself, years ago on Earth's moon, because they understood something we never did. Growth is not a finite resource. When one species rises, it does not mean another must fall. When one individual learns, it does not diminish the knowledge of others. She looked out the window at the campus below, where beings from a dozen different worlds walked together in the afternoon sun. It could have been bitter. They could have built walls and weapons and waited for revenge. Instead, they built doors. The Galactic Council held its final session on a gray morning 10 years after humanity walked away. Only 4 species remained. The Great Chamber, built to awe and intimidate, felt empty and sad. The Therian High Arbiter, older now than any Therian had ever been, made the motion to dissolve the council. His voice, once thunderous, was quiet and thin. We spent so long believing we were the teachers, he said. We looked at younger species and saw children to be guided, threats to be managed, problems to be solved. We never considered that we might have something to learn. He looked around at the empty thrones, at the stones carved from 100 different worlds, at the ceiling that stretched so high it made visitors feel small. This chamber was built to remind everyone of our power, to make them feel insignificant, to show them their place. He rose slowly from his throne. Perhaps that was always the problem. The motion to dissolve passed unanimously. On Earth, Alina Vasquez watched the news from her office. She was Secretary General of the Interstellar Cooperative now, the organization that had grown from humanity's departure to encompass most of known space. It was not perfect. Nothing ever was. But it was better. Better because it was built on different principles. Principles of cooperation instead of control, of growth instead of hierarchy, of doors instead of walls. Her assistant entered with a cup of coffee and a message pad. The former High Arbiter has requested a meeting. He wants to discuss the Therian application for cooperative membership. Lena nodded, unsurprised. Schedule it for next week. Give him the good time slot, the one with the view of the garden. Her assistant smiled. Some of the younger staff think we should make him wait. After everything the Therians did. Lena shook her head. That would make us exactly what we walked away from. Show him respect. Show him that we meant what we said about equals. She turned back to the window, looking out at the blue sky and the busy streets below. Humans and Therians and Velith and Dravith and a dozen other species walked together. Talked together, lived together. It had taken 300 years of patience. It had taken one moment of courage. It had taken a single word, spoken in a chamber designed to make speakers feel small, goodbye, not a threat, not a demand. Just a goodbye, and in the end, the galaxy had followed. Humanity had not won by being stronger or smarter, or more ruthless than the ancient empires that had tried to keep them down. They had won by walking away and proving that they did not need anyone's permission to be extraordinary. They had opened their doors and simply waited, and the universe had chosen to walk through.